Good morning, LBC Radio. This is Corey Rosen with the Story Podcast. Today I have on RJ Conrad. RJ Conrad is from Enola, PA, where he lives with his wife and their three young children. He formed his band Rascal Revival and in 2017 as a folk trio, and they have grown into a full six-piece band in recent years. They've made some noise locally, opening for bands like Switchfoo, Medusa's Disco, and national touring artist Keller Williams. Along with leading Rascal Revival, you can find RJ playing solo acoustic gigs, even some acoustic duo gigs with lead guitarist Jake Joyce at some of the area's wineries, vineyards, bars, and live music venues. If you ask him, his most important work is done during the day, staying at home to raise his three children who are not only an inspiration for his songwriting, but sometimes even help with the process. Follow RJ here at his website, rascalrevivalmusic.com, on Spotify, which is Rascal Revival,
Yes.
and Facebook page. He has a Facebook page for Rascal Revival, Instagram as well,
Correct.
and he has a Bandcamp, which is also under the name Rascal Revival. RJ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited because you're one of the more interesting people that I think I'm gonna have on, given your primary line of work, which is a full-time dad.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay.
I wanna know what inspired you to do music to begin with.
Years ago, actually, in elementary school, we had a local cover band come by, and they played what was one of my favorite songs at the time, which was "If You Could Only See" by Tonic. And I felt like I was the only person in that gymnasium full of screaming kids during that song. And I just remember just feeling connected with the music and with the people who were playing the instruments. And they played other songs as well, most of which I later found out that they were also cover songs, but I hadn't heard them being in, second or third grade. And it made me realize that writing music would be incredible. And then it wasn't until years later, once I was in college, that I really picked up a guitar. And I mean, I had one prior to that, but I picked up a guitar and haven't really put it down much since. I want to connect with people when I write music and when I perform music, and I think I at this point I want to not reconnect, but connect with people in the same way that I did when I was younger. And
I think recreate that connection.
That same connection, yes, exactly. And I think music has the power to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
That not many other things, if anything, has the power to do.
No, music is the universal. It's the universal language and the universal connector.
Absolutely.
Even granted, you can play a song in like a Western song to a different civilization, and they'll understand.
Yeah.
What the feeling is.
Right. Exactly.
And it's really incredible how influential just music is in general.
Yeah. It really is. And looking back, it's unfortunate that it took me so long. I was one of those people that looked at other people playing music and was like, man, I always wanted to do that. And I was just tired of saying I've always wanted to do that. I played sports my whole life, and in college I was actually forced out of sports because of injuries. And after that, I was always used to having a 2-hour block for practice. And I picked up my guitar, and almost 2 hours a day I would practice, and I got pretty good over the years.
2 hours a day, you're gonna get pretty good at whatever you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things that I was able to understand from my years of sports was that you're not just going to be good at anything. You have to practice to get good at it. And also early on, you're not going to be good. So you have to understand those two things in order to get better. You're not going to sound good right away, and in order to sound good, you're going to have to put in the time.
And it is tedious to do that.
It can be.
And especially with like guitar, where you have to build up calluses.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes your fingers start bleeding, and it's like, why am I? It almost feels like self-torture.
Yeah.
At points.
With being a stay-at-home dad, now I don't get to practice as much. So I had a gig a year or two ago with the band where 45 minutes into a 3-hour set, my right hand started bleeding
Oh no.
all over my guitar. So I just taped it up with electrical tape, and we made it happen. But
Oh my.
it was uncomfortable, that's for sure.
Oh.
That fresh feeling like right off your fingertip there, yeah, it wasn't fun.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I've hated trying to play guitar is just the amount of like after I'm done, I see like dents in my finger, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what in the world?
Yeah, it can be pretty gnarly when you're not familiar with it, especially like you said, when you see like indentations that are like sometimes you press your finger and it comes right back out, but like
Right,
you see those
yeah,
indentations, they're there for a long time before it presses itself back out.
yeah. It's wild to me. I have high respect for anybody who plays a stringed instrument in general because oh my goodness, the calluses that they like it's almost like touching work hands.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. That roughness to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Callous. And like back when I was first learning how to play guitar seriously, I had a 12 string. So to make my calluses even worse, I was playing a lot and I had a 12 string. So I'm envious of those calluses I used to have. But I've had I had 3 shows last weekend and made it through without any blood, so that was good.
That's always it's always good. You had talked about a little bit pre-show about how similar sport and music was.
Yeah. It's funny because like going into the music scene when I did, you go to open mics. You're not gonna go anywhere else. You're not gonna be able to find a gig until you play music in front of people. And one of the places I went, I mentioned that, and I could literally see people just being turned off immediately, and it just reminded me of how when I was in high school, like how the adolescent mind, there's people who play sports and then there's people who play music, and there's not much of an overlap, but they're really doing the same thing. You have to practice, you have to prepare, you have to be mentally sharp for your performance.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, my favorite things about both sports and music is everything else that you're doing that's going on in your life for that 5-minute song or that 30-minute performance or that hour-long game or that 3-hour-long show, nothing else matters.
Right.
Take like nothing else that you're going through, and it actually makes those things easier
to deal with.
Yes.
It's a coping mechanism.
Absolutely. I know people who have multiple siblings in their family, and I feel like knowing where we're at now as adults, I'm able to see the differences in how, like, oh, this sibling had a very structured, they played sports, they played music, whatever it was, and it helped them. And then their same sibling who may not have done those things is struggling emotionally now. And I personally think that there's a correlation between growing up in sports or in music and having those things help you grow and challenge you that really pay dividends down the road when you're coming to some real things that happen in your life as an adult.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I never thought about it like that. But if you have like a passion as a child that you throw your entire, granted, there are some people who just play sports for the fun of it, and that's it, and that's literally it.
And I've seen parents overdo it.
And that's all I was going to say.
I've seen plenty of that over the years too.
Yeah, but if your child is truly passionate about something, I was passionate about Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts.
Awesome.
Like going out into nature and doing
beautiful.
and not only to mention the psychological effects that are literally documented of going outside and hanging out in the sun and doing all these wonderful things with nature, but to be passionate about it and love doing it, even if I'm getting bitten by a million mosquitoes, even if I'm getting sunburned off anything.
Yeah.
Nothing else truly I don't know if you listened to my other podcast, but I had a really rough childhood dealing with domestic violence and
your dad, right?
Yeah, my dad, and having to deal with losing a house and all that other jazz. And I was able to cope with that because I could go out and, just enjoy nature. I could get my hands dirty. I can chop up some wood.
Right. Oh yeah.
And get that
manual
anger
labor.
out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Manual labor goes a long way.
For sure. And it's not everyone's preferred method.
No.
Granted, whether because some people I know sew like sewing, like knitting.
Yeah.
And that gets them so far.
Right. Oh yeah.
Just by not monotonously, but it's almost like it's just
Yeah.
automatic.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, there's a therapeutic
Yeah.
portion to that. And what's cool is you're actually making something with that time too.
Right. Yeah, like even granted my parents would say he's wasting his time, but I used to make these gigantic Lincoln log
Yeah.
structures or gigantic train track
Yeah.
structures. What an adult might have said, well, oh, he's just practicing to be an engineer
Right,
or
exactly. Yeah.
something.
Yeah, and I think our generation has a very big advantage to previous generations in the fact that we just have a general better understanding of how the human mind works.
And we have so much more stuff to do.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
back then, you would get like a little toy fire truck, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, right?
And now you have all this wonderful technology that can be used for good or bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To be said,
Moderation with everything.
Moderation with everything for sure. But oh my goodness, can you get a child behind so many different activities?
Yeah.
That was most likely never available to them.
Oh yeah,
ever.
yeah. And the amount of growth that humans and our society has seen in the past 50 to 100 years is
It's wild.
completely mind-blowing.
And there's pros and cons to that for sure.
Oh yeah, that definitely is. There definitely is. And it's easy to forget that Einstein was alive in the 60s. Like,
right.
you know what I mean? Like,
here's one of the most mind-blowing facts I ever came across was that Martin Luther King and Anne Frank were born in the same year.
yeah, right? It's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about.
Crazy to think about. Crazy to think about. And it's wild the amount of like access that children have
Oh yeah.
to do something with themselves.
Yeah.
And to put themselves fully behind a project, because I truly do believe that a child needs to have that stimulation
Oh yeah.
in their brain,
Yeah.
whether it just be playing with Barbies or toys and dolls or whatever, because like it's fashion,
Yeah.
if
Right?
anything,
Yeah.
or that's it's organization at some
Or
point.
even if nothing else, it's they're learning to manipulate things with their hands.
Yeah, yes, right. They're being tactile.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the video games, even if I hadn't played video games, I would not have be really good with my like hand-eye coordination
Yeah.
or granted, my family was like, oh, he's just playing video games, wasting his life. Everything in moderation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But now I'm really tactile with my hands.
Yeah.
I can move my hands around in ways that other people can't. When I play piano, for
Yeah.
example,
Oh yeah.
I have such incredible reach, not only because I have gigantic monster hands, but also I can like reach an octave plus 2 or 3.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which
I
is
struggle with the octave.
yeah, right. Yeah, right. It's insane. And that's all because I played video games as a
Yeah.
child. And I have really good accuracy because of that too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Some of those games you need to be very precise on.
very precise.
Yeah.
So it's really awesome. If you do have children, everything in moderation. That is absolutely 100% true.
Yeah.
But don't disencourage.
Yeah.
your
Oh yeah.
children.
Yeah. And one thing I try to do with my kids at home is if they are doing something they're not supposed to be doing is just redirect them to something else instead of telling them no constantly. Which
Mm-hmm.
I mean I struggle with. I'm human.
Yes.
Redirecting is going to build a better foundation of trust between you and your kid than you just
Just
telling
saying
them no
no,
all the time.
And you can't do anything else.
Yeah, and I feel obligated to mention that I'm incredibly lucky to be able to stay home with my kids. There's so many people out there that
Can't.
I mean, childcare is the price of childcare is crazy.
Wild.
And we have 3 now. So to send 3 kids to daycare or preschool would be I would be basically going to work for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, my wife and I made some decisions early on. Our first house was a dirt cheap house, and we got out of debt and we saved some money. And now I'm lucky enough and able to stay home with the 3 kids. For our first child, my wife and I both worked full time.
Mm.
She worked nights, and she actually worked nights up to just a few months ago, even with 3 kids. So there was some sacrifices made for sure.
For sure.
I started staying home when my wife went back to work after our second was born.
Mm.
So he's about 3.5 now. So about how long I've been doing this.
Um.
And it's so I'm so lucky to see them grow every day because there's so many things. Like, there's something new almost every day, and
Something new almost
I'm
every day.
I'm so glad I can be the one to share those things with my wife instead of them not being shared with someone that we're paying to watch them.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
like I said, we're in a very, very fortunate situation that the only thing that I wish I could do different is have my wife be the one who gets to, because I want so bad for her
To experience those moments.
to experience all of it. But I went to school to be a teacher. I'm not doing that. I worked in the automotive field for a long time, and she was a nurse, so it kind of made sense when we decided that we didn't want to send the kids to daycare. When we'd start making moves early on, and I would be the one to stay home with them, which is, I have younger siblings too, so I was about 10 when I had 3 more siblings be born, so I got to see them.
Yeah.
I got a lot of experience in that time. So I feel like I had
Probably almost became a mini dad.
Yeah, I came in comfortable. I was able to be like, okay, I knew what had to happen and how to handle certain situations.
That's always good.
And I'm still learning.
Yeah, right. And there's no perfect parent at all.
No.
But having that experience for sure helps. I'm teaching children how to swim, and that's from like I taught a 3-month-old yesterday.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And all the way up to like adults, and I think it's almost invaluable because not only do I get to see the progression of being there's one kid who was crying at the moment their feet touched the water.
Right.
Like I was wondering how the heck did he even take baths at this
right.
point? And they're clutching onto me, like death gripping me, like I'm having marks being put on my body because they're so scared. And now he can float on his back, no problem.
Yeah.
Maybe a little worry, but that's all.
Yeah.
It's the amount of joy and reward that comes from seeing a child grow.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, man, and that gets you through the hardest days of your entire life.
It does, and it's crazy because like you see so much in such a short period of time. I mentioned this to you before the show. Like, I think I learned it in college because I went to school for kinesiology. If humans continued to grow at the rate we do the first couple of years, we would be huge.
Yeah.
The amount of growth that happens in the first few years is you can literally see things daily and weekly that like visually.
Visually, yes.
There's my youngest. There was times where she would look exactly like my wife's baby pictures, and then like 2 weeks later look exactly like my baby pictures.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, it's crazy how she would just go back and forth. Now she looks more like my wife, and I hope it stays that way. But there was a time, and with her being my third, it was the first time that I looked at my own baby in my hands, and there was a weird time warp thing because I've seen pictures of myself that looked exactly like that. And that was like the first two didn't. They look like me, but not just like my son looks like a mini version of me now.
Oh, really?
But not necessarily like I did when I was his age. But there was a period in time, it was just a weird time warp looking at her face because it looked so much like I've seen pictures of my baby pictures.
It's so interesting. I've always been told that I look exactly like my dad did when he was older, and it to the point where he handed me a picture, no context. There was no context behind this. He just handed me a picture, and I was like, I never had those glasses. Right. And he was like, that's me, and I'm like, yeah. I'm sorry, what?
So I now live in the hometown that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. I moved away for a while. I came back, and I'm seeing some friends that I grew up with again. And a lot of some of these guys, I never thought they looked like their dads growing up. And every single one of them now looks exactly like their dad did when I first met their dad.
That's wild.
Like when I was little. Yeah. You know what I mean? I go over to a friend's house, I'm like, okay, nice to meet you. That's what they look like now. All of the guys look exactly like their dads now.
Yeah, it's so fascinating that that's how it works.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's so much fun. I can't wait to have my own children.
It's such a blessing.
It's such a blessing, and it's so different from like I have other people's children all the time, and it's awesome, but it's not.
You get to give them back.
Yeah, I have to give them back, right? And some of them are the cutest things in the world, and some of them they might be giving me a hard time. And afterwards, I'm like, I just want a hug. And I'm like, okay.
Right? Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. Yeah. And sometimes that's literally all they need. Like,
oh my goodness,
that's
yeah.
the,
It's something we've talked about a few times on the podcast is the developmental process of a child, like of how little the littlest things, like things you would have never thought of, change the perspective of a child. Like if you don't
yeah.
give them a hug, if you don't
Yeah.
give them a high
Oh,
five, if you
yeah.
don't say good job or say I love you when
Yeah.
they go, or you don't even wave goodbye to them,
Right.
that's it's gonna stick with them
Oh,
in the
yeah.
back of their minds. And parenting is almost a nightmare because you have to figure out those little things and have to balance and have to constantly because
And
I
each one's
know
different.
in each one is
Yeah. So
different.
exactly. That's what I had to figure out was my third is nothing like my first two.
Oh my goodness.
So I had to just figure out, okay, how am I going to handle this situation? And like she slept way worse than the first two did. So I was like, that was my
no.
first real dealing with not a good sleeper.
My goodness. Yeah, no, I I have an ADHD brain, so
Yeah.
it's gonna come naturally to me, or it does usually come more naturally to me when I have to like deal with children. But it's gonna be a whole nother level because there are some times where I can't be bothered to
Yeah.
interact with children the way they need to be
Yeah.
interacted with.
Let alone like I don't even want to deal with adults and they're easier. They're not necessarily easier, but like sometimes I
Adults
could
are
deal with an
worse
adult.
almost.
Yeah, they can. Adults are or children still.
Or children still, yes. Yes.
Once I realized that, I looked at the world completely differently. Like adults are just large children.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it is almost easier sometimes to deal with an adult. Or sometimes I come into work and I'm like, I don't have the mind power to talk to you as an adult. I have to save it for the kids.
Yeah, and I'm with kids all day. So
Mhm.
like when I get the chance to interact with an adult, I'll usually jump at it. Like I go out and I play music and I'll have a drink or two and then I'll realize that I'm talking to someone after the show who came up to talk to me and I'm like, "Oh crap, how long have I been talking?" You know, cuz like I just don't get to interact with adults a ton. So yeah, and there's some funny things I've seen online relating to that. But with it's for me, sometimes it's easier to deal with adults because I deal with children all day, and vice versa. If you're dealing with adults all day, children can be a breath of fresh air. Like I
Right.
used to come home from work when we only had one kid, and just I didn't enjoy my work. And then I would come home and I would just be in such a better mood instantly.
Yeah,
Well, my wife might argue with the instantly thing, but
well, I mean, everything is relative for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Because from her perspective, you're coming in. I don't want to talk to adults. I want to talk
Right?
to
Yeah,
children.
right? Yeah, exactly. And granted, my wife is way smarter than anybody I used to work with, but
Fair.
I'm not sure who that says more about, but
Right.
she's incredibly smart, and some of the guys I work with are very, very smart too, but not all of them.
And you know what? The average, it always surprises me how much the average human, like intellectually wise, what the average. You have to realize there's an average intellect of humans,
Yeah.
and then half of the
them.
population are less than that.
George Carlin is who I heard of. Like talked about that first, but I'm sure it's been
Yeah,
talked
that's
about.
kind of I think
Yeah.
where I got it from.
Yeah.
So
A lot of what he says probably shouldn't be said on this station.
oh,
but,
absolutely, absolutely not.
But that is one that you can.
That's one quote.
Yeah, that's a good one. For sure. That's like I mentioned earlier. Once I realized that, it's like, oh, okay. The world makes a lot more sense now. Like, there's actually some dumb people making really important decisions.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's
And money talks.
money
too, so,
talks.
like,
Yep.
There's a lot of things that are out of our control.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the well, we'll not touch that. But I want to know what a day in the life of a dad at home looks like, because I assume that you homeschooled your children at this point now.
My youngest is 4, so she'll be going to school next year. We're
okay.
we're not sure. We've talked about homeschooling. We've talked about sending her, but she's got a July birthday, so we were going to wait till next year.
Mm-hmm.
The kicker for me was do we want to send her this year or next year? Was how old do we want her to be when she graduates high school? 17 or 18? 18 is what I would rather. If I'm going to send my daughter off to college, I'd much rather her be 18 than 17. Have that extra year for her brain to develop.
Right.
Or my
Fair
son,
enough.
same thing. Like if he had a July birthday, your brain doesn't stop developing until you're 25. So
for boys, right? Isn't it different
male
for
and
women?
female, I think it's
Oh, okay.
25. I could be wrong. But it's right around the same.
Right.
Regardless, 18, your brain's still developing.
Right, that's right.
And so, with me having gone to school to be a teacher, that's something that we're considering. But now we have another year to make that decision because she's not 5 yet.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I graduated when I was 17.
Yeah.
High school, and I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I guess
there was a lot more that went into the conversation.
Right.
But
so what is a day in the life for a dad? Stay-at-home dad.
I'm usually up by 6 o'clock, 6:30 when my wife leaves for work. I started waking up when she leaves recently. I used to let my kids wake me up, and then I'm just groggy and trying
to manage 50 million things.
If I give myself 15, 20 minutes to get up before they're awake. Granted, the sun's coming up earlier and earlier now, which is making that a little bit more difficult. But I try to get up 15 to 20 minutes before they can, so like 6 o'clock-ish. They're usually up by 6:30, 7.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I wasn't up until I was forced to be up.
Well, hopefully as they get older, that will change, because right now they're 4, 3, and 1. So
that makes sense.
Diaper needs changed right away.
Sense.
So, I've been changing diapers every day for a solid number of years now.
How's that been for you?
It's really not that bad. The changing the diaper thing. Yeah, it's.
I'm a super germophobic person.
Yeah, if you go into it with a like anything, if you go into it with a positive mindset, and if you just, all right, I'm gonna get this done real quick.
So they don't pee on me and everything.
Yeah, I only had one boy, so I didn't have to worry about getting peed on too much. But yeah, I'm up. I'm usually making them breakfast by about 7:30, depending on what time they woke up. And we eat breakfast. They take a while to eat. So breakfast usually lasts till somewhere around 9. So, excuse me. And then we will usually listen to music. My youngest will say that she wants to dance, but she really just wants to listen to music.
Gotcha.
Excuse me. Listen to music or watch. Actually, we usually listen to music for a solid half hour. We've actually discovered some music together, which is really fun.
Oh, that's cool. What music have they gravitated towards?
Lake Street Dive is a big one.
Lake Street Dive? I don't think I've ever heard of that.
They are fantastic.
I'll have to write that one
My
down.
drummer actually introduced me to them, and they have a female lead singer, upright bass, drums, guitar, and now just recently added keyboard. But they're all just incredibly talented musicians. Certainly worth checking out. They'll be at. I'm taking my oldest two to see them in June. Actually, this month, I guess, in a few weeks down in York.
Oh wow!
I took my oldest a couple years ago when they played at the Whitaker Center, and they saw her, and they came out after their encore, and they had signed a drum head, and they gave it to her. She was like,
so cool.
So I have that hanging up in her room now. I'm sorry, I'm kind of backtracking from the daily life thing, but yeah, we listen to a lot of music, which is for me so much fun because I love music, and they're learning to love music, and they play their instruments along with them. They have a little ukulele and a little violin.
That's really
just
cool.
Getting them in their hands and getting them. They can both strum the guitar really well. My oldest
really?
too. Yeah, they don't play anything yet,
Right,
but they're getting really good at, and they're asking me for picks all the time. But it's so much fun to just use YouTube or because they're very visual. They want to see what's coming next.
Gotcha.
And I can tell them no if it's not something that's appropriate. But we use Pandora or Spotify, which is nice. I can turn the TV off, like the screen off, and have that stuff play. Like I said, usually do that for about an hour. And then they'll usually ask to watch a show. We usually stick to like Daniel Tiger, which is basically Mr. Rogers in cartoon form.
Isn't that with the tiger and the little kid, blind kid?
No, it's a cartoon basically with the trolley and stuff for Mr. Rogers.
Oh, so it's literally a Mr. Rogers ripoff almost.
It's supported by the Mr. Rogers company. They
so
actually make it. Yes,
gotcha.
Yes.
I don't mean to say ripoff in a bad.
What I really like about that show is it helps them be emotionally intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Leapfrog for like the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s.
Yes, I remember Leapfrog.
That's been great. They all know or not my youngest, but my oldest two know all their letters and the sounds they make and can spell their names.
That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure my oldest could have passed kindergarten this year, but
really,
and I think that's just comes from being able to be. She's brilliant on her own. Don't get me wrong, but I think the time that I've been able to be home with her and and spend with her when the other two are napping. Like she loves to draw and color, and so usually by 11 o'clock, my youngest is going down for a nap. Or recently turned into 11:30. So she goes down for a nap around 11:30, and the other two will have their quiet time where they color or do a puzzle or something together, and then my son will go down for his nap. My oldest is done napping, so that gives her and I some one-on-one opportunity.
That must be nice.
In the middle of the day, which is really nice. So the youngest two will actually sleep till about the same time, even though my oldest goes down an hour, older one goes down an hour later. So they'll sleep till about 2:30, sometimes 3 if I let them, but that makes for a nightmare bedtime situation because they slept too much. But after that, I mean, in that time, before nap time and after nap time, they get snacks or lunch, depending on what time, all that. I mean, every day is a little bit different.
Right.
And they're hungrier than
you could ever imagine.
Yeah, sometimes they get full-on lunch with multiple courses, and sometimes they get crackers. But it's nice that I'm learning to read that, and they are old enough to now just to tell me how hungry they are. And then
your daughter's like, I could eat a horse.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah. How many waffles do you want? Like, I'll have 2 waffles. 2 whole waffles. You can eat 2 whole waffles right now. Like, yeah. All right, let's do it.
It must be nice for you because you get all the leftovers.
Right? Oh, I do. I definitely get the leftovers. And then after they wake up and have their snack, we either go outside. My dad got the kids a blow-up like jump house with a slide and a
like
section for water.
House.
Yeah,
That's cool.
It's nice size for their age. So we actually just broke that out the other day. With it being like 90 degrees, but we try to find new things to do in the afternoon. That's our time to
explore.
Which the summertime might flip flop that because the shade in our yard is there in the morning. So if we're gonna go do something in the in the yard, it should probably be in the morning, and it won't be quite as hot then either.
Yeah, I'm sure you have to.
But that pushes us close to dinner time, and if my wife's working a 12-hour shift, I'll be in charge of dinner. If she can get home in time for dinner, she usually. My kids say that she makes really good dinner and I make really good breakfast.
That's fair enough.
I don't make that great of dinner. Like last night they got quesadillas and watermelon and something else that was pretty easy. But when my wife makes dinner, she knocks it out of the park. And we have leftovers for a couple days.
Oh, wow.
So like it's not we get fed well.
That's good. That's important.
And what's nice is some days my wife will work an 8-hour shift. Sometimes she's 12. But what's really nice is she's on days now. That's the biggest game changer for me. Because like one shift she had to sleep before during the day, and then the day after. So one shift took up 2 days. And
I'm sure the kids will be like, I wanted to see mommy, and then
exactly.
go into her
They
room.
want to see her all the time, and like we have sound machines to help drown out sound and things like that. But now that she's on days, it's such a big difference. Like. I feel like we have an extra day a week at least to do things because her days off aren't she's not spending sleeping, catching up on sleep.
Right, yeah.
And I can just go outside and like cut the grass if it needs done or pull some weeds or whatever needs done around the house. I isolate days. Like if it's going to I watch the weather. Like if she's going to be off when it's nice, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do something outside. I try to get that planned before I go out and do it. But there's always something going on. Always something to do. Especially we bought a new house last year. We got incredibly lucky with the market.
I was going to say, you picked a nice time to do it.
we sold our first house. I had finished the basement, put a new bathroom in. So we made out pretty well on the sale of that house. And then the same day that we sold, long story short here, because there's a lot more that goes into this. Long story short, the same day that we signed off on our house, my mother-in-law's best friend got an offer on her house, and we knew that we wanted that house if there was any way. And the same day she got an offer on it and called us and said, essentially, do you want to buy my house? My mother-in-law had plans with her to hang out that night, and she's like, hey, I got an offer on my house today. And she's like, oh, you don't sound very excited. She likely sounded less excited than I just did, but but why? Like, why don't you sound excited about it? And she's like, well, they're being pushy about signing like right now, and like I don't know, it just feels weird. And my mother-in-law goes, well, what if I told you RJ and Kat sold their house this morning. And they called me right away. And my wife was on the way out the door for her to go to work. I was like, your mom's calling me. She's like, why is my mom calling you? Just answer it. It's like, all right, I'll answer it. So I answered it, and she's like, hey, I have Shannon here, and then like so my wife stops, and like we talked about. So then that was basically it.
That was it.
Yeah, the next day we were under contract, and
that's awesome.
So like I would have told you this was one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life before she went out of her way to sell us her house. But now I'm like, where can I get your name tattooed on me?
Right, yeah.
You know? Like,
I just my next changed
my life. Yeah, like, just changed my life. Like, I didn't grow up in a very big house. I didn't have my own room till my roommate left after a semester in my freshman year of college. Like, I never had my own room. I lived in a small house. I agree, my parents did their best, but, like, it's just not something I had.
Right.
And I knew that was something I always wanted for my kids, was for them to have their room if they wanted it. Like right now, my girls share a room. We have a spare room, but they're the age that they just like each other's company and like to share a room. So, and my wife loves that. I'm like, cool, all right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always wanted to have a bigger house. I never grew up in. I wouldn't say we didn't grow up in a small house per se. Granted, it was only me, my dad, my sister, and my mother, so it was literally not that bad at all.
Yeah, I'm one of 6. I'm the second oldest, so it was 3 till I was about 10, and then there was another group of 3 that were born in over I guess 5 or 6 years.
That requires a big house.
Yeah, and then after I graduated high school, they moved out to a bigger house. So like that was. And they all got their own rooms, and I was like, "Wait a second,
this isn't right. This isn't fair."
Yeah,
but first child always gets the roughest life.
And my older brother actually had it worse. I guess he probably never had his own room longer than that.
Oh,
because
wow.
I mean, he didn't have a roommate that left after one semester of college.
Oh my.
And then I know he had. I mean, I had to ask him, but it was probably a little bit longer than me as far as that, but. He definitely got the rough end as far as be a little bit more disciplined. My parents were a little bit more disciplined with him and kind of slowly backed off over the years with the other ones. I mean, I feel like that might be natural, just as you get older, like as a parent. But
yeah, it's
funny because it's such a natural thing, but there's people that get upset about it.
Right. Yeah. It's not like you could have changed anything.
No, exactly. And like I don't think of my parents any differently because of
that.
Right,
because of like their personal situation.
But because of my personality, I'm gonna give you a hard time about it.
Yeah.
Like,
right. Yeah.
I do that with everything. That's how I show people affection. Like I give them a little jab, and it's never. Well, at least from my view, it's never crosses a line. But
yeah, well, that's how you really know if you're friends with somebody. If you can throw a jab at them and they're like, all right, okay.
Yeah, me and my best friends, you should hear us, man.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard my conversation with Cody Kilburn.
That was recently, right?
Yeah. Just the other day. And I was like, you got to get yourself organized. And he was like, all right, Corey, let's talk about you. How about your car? And I was like, all right, fair enough. But yeah, so that's really how you know if you got a strong bond with somebody. I'll mess around. I play around with my dad and my grandmother all the time. I'll rag on my sister a lot, and she's like, "Okay, shut up."
If they ask me to stop, I'll stop. But it's usually just one or two.
Time and place.
Yeah,
time and place.
Absolutely. Read the room
for sure. Yeah, but I want to get more into because
I'm gonna finish this real quick.
Okay, go for it.
Dinner, like I said, just like breakfast, lasts quite a while. So dinner's usually from like 5:30 to 7ish, and then at that point, kids' bedtime's like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So it's basically get them ready for bed and get cleaned up from dinner, and
then you get to hang out with your wife for the rest of it.
Yeah, if depending on what type of day she'd had, 12-hour shift, 8-hour shift. She has a night requirement where she has to go in like once or twice a month, just at this position she's in now. But it's been such a big difference.
I'm sure it's a lot nicer.
Yeah.
Than having
this past year has been a lot of big changes for the better. For us. And
yeah, I couldn't imagine having because as a husband you want to be with your wife anyway,
right?
So having to choose to like, all right, I have to sacrifice my wants for her needs of sleep,
yeah,
and then maybe I'll see her when she comes in in the morning, but it's only gonna have to be like a short amount of time before she has to go to sleep again.
And she's like, she'll come home and want to see the kids and want to stay up, but she's so tired.
She just can't.
Like it's so nice that she's on day shift now. It's been such a game changer for me. Like, I know that all the sacrifices we made years ago, like, have paid off.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what was it like to start your band? Because you had mentioned before the show that it was either at this one point it was either now or never.
Yeah. Once I started playing guitar and really writing my own stuff, I just knew that things I was writing needed more sound than just an acoustic guitar. There's plenty of great musicians out there that can play with just an acoustic guitar and write great songs.
But adding is always fun.
Yes, for sure. And playing, I have become such a better musician in the past 4 or 5 years that I've had the band than I did before. And with far less practice. Part of that is just the growth of being a musician.
And playing with other people.
Yeah, and just playing with them and having a band where every single guy in the band is a better musician than me, it makes me want to be so much better. And like, so the times that I do get to put into practice, I'm hyper focused on whatever I feel like I need to get better at. And what's cool about it is like a lot of things I didn't like about songs I was writing were just my vocal tone. So being home listening to music with the kids, I'm just gonna sing along with this Adele song and not have anyone hear it and get better at singing because I'm practicing singing way up here.
Right.
You know, and I've noticed a difference in just being around the house, and I'm one of those people that somebody can say something like a phrase and it'll just make me think of a song that has that word, a phrase in it. And like when I'm around the kids, I don't have to filter that. Like around adults, you kind of having a conversation, you kind of just
be awkward to
put break that out into song. But at home with the kids, I can just do that and like practice hitting a note and not have anyone around to
really care about it.
And what's really cool is like they get to give me feedback and they are very honest. Kids are honest. Like if I don't, like if they're dancing to something, I'm like, okay, this has something to it. Or if they just say, "Daddy, I don't like this one," then I'm like, okay, noted.
Noted.
Yeah.
Daddy, no.
But yeah, my goal was to start the band before my first child was born, and she'll be 5 here in July, and the band started. Basically, we had our first practice at my old house, and it was empty. And I want to say it was probably April or May that we had our first practice in that house, and it was, like I said, just completely empty. Great acoustics, but like, I had to project more than I normally do, and with new guys around, and I was like, oh, I don't know how this went, but my violinist has stuck around since then. The guy I had playing percussion actually is a sound guy at HMAC in Harrisburg now.
Oh wow! So
that took away all of his Fridays and Saturday nights.
Yep.
So like I got kind of out a drummer.
Right.
So in 2019, about 2 years after the band first started, I mean, it was a few months till we got gigs, and we released our first EP about a year into the project. I lost a drummer, so I had to find a new one. I got on that website, Bandmix, which apparently they have like algorithms where if you try to put your personal information without paying for your personal information to be on there, they'll yank it off. So like, I was one of the people that thought I like got around that, but then like I just logged on. I didn't log on, and I searched for myself, and I found out that none of my personal information was there. So long story short, I see a guy who his profile picture is him and Carter Beauford of Dave Matthews Band, and I'm a big Dave Matthews Band fan. A big reason being Carter Beauford, just unreal on the drums, and it said he was from York, and that's like 20 minutes from me in Enola. So I was like, I just got on Facebook, and I knew his first name was Jeff, and I just searched for Jeff in York, and his picture on Facebook was him and Dave Matthews.
Well, there you go.
I was like, all right, I'm going to send this stranger a message. So I sent him a message on Facebook, and I was like, hey, man, I have a gig coming up. I'm in need of a drummer. I don't know if you're in for sitting in. Like, I don't have much time to practice right now. It's like 2 weeks out. And give you a set list, whatever you need. And he responded and was was willing to come try. So we played our first gig together, knowing we were going to show up an hour or two early, get set up, kind of chit chat a little bit, get to know each other, and then we get there, and my PA system's just acting up.
Oh no!
I spent that whole time getting it to work. So like we're about to start, I get it working, and it's basically, hey man, here's the final set list. I'll meet you in 2 hours. And so we played that show. He did great. I played some original material, played some Dave Matthews stuff, played a lot of the regulars that we now play as a band. And it went really well. We hung out afterwards, and he goes, hey, so I'm in this other band, and I just found out our bassist is also a guitar player. He's crazy good. He's like, do you happen to be looking for a guitar player? I was like, that's literally the next thing on my list, because I needed to find a drummer first.
Right.
And I want the band to grow. At that point, we only had violin and saxophone with the drums, bass, and guitar. Saxophone actually joined our band for a show. Like, he came in, we thought we were going to be upstairs at HMAC, and I was like, we're like a folk trio. It was one of our first shows as a trio. So I called up my friend Eric, and I was like, hey, do you want to come?
Eric D'Amelia?
Yeah. However, I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, right. It's
that last name is the reason when I remember to introduce the band at shows, I just go their first name.
Right.
I have everyone else's last name down but his, so I just go, this is Jeff on drums, this is Eric on saxophone, and that's if I remember to. I forget to do it sometimes, and I feel so bad. But like we opened for Keller Williams a couple months ago, and I'm just like so focused on getting through all these songs, I forgot. I think I might have mentioned Liam before his bass solo. But I meant to do like a thing in the middle of a song, and I just completely forgot. But we actually had a song on that we played that day that we didn't even rehearse. I got an email that morning saying we had an extra 15 minutes if we wanted it. I was like, yeah, of course, we'll take it. Yeah. So that we played one of those songs that we added for our sound check, and then we just didn't rehearse this other one. And it sounded the best we've ever played it. I love like the in the moment improvisational nature of music. Yes. If you go that route, I mean, if I want to hear something the way it sounds on an album, I can just listen to the album.
Right.
Like I love when I hear things that little things that just jump out at me. Like even if it's really close to the album version, just like little things, little
differences.
Yeah, little things that.
One of the things I like to strive for as a musician is to never copy someone. Yeah. Always to add little bit of my own stuff in it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And because that's what really makes a performance. Yeah. If you hear like House of the Rising Sun the exact same way it's done on the radio, it's like I've already heard this.
Right. Exactly.
It's so much more fun when people play around with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And really just
add their own little liberties to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much more engaging because now you're listening for new
things.
It's
so much more engaging, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that the first time I saw live music was it had me so engaged. It was just like it was the feeling of being connected and like engaged to this person I don't know, but there's a connection there right now that like is just undeniable.
Yeah, it's so interesting how you were mentioning it. Yeah, I just messaged this random person that I just found. It's literally how a lot of musicians connect.
Yeah.
Which is that's how you connected to me. I don't think I've ever met before.
Yeah, we had never met. I saw Liam was on one of your early episodes, and then he was actually Rascal Revival's original bassist. Real quick sidetrack, then I'll come back. It's funny, we were looking for bass because we were 3-piece originally for our recording, and our drummer called Liam to come see if he could record on our EP, and he was in Nashville. Like, how often do you get a call when you're in Nashville to come record in Pennsylvania? Right. It should be the other way around.
It should be the exact other way around.
So Liam is now playing with Ben Brent and the Soul Miners Union pretty much full time. They're a great blues trio. Ben's an unbelievable guitarist. Yeah. And then we brought in Henry Dvorak, who you had on shortly after that. And I noticed that those two were on. I was like, oh, hold on. I think I sent you a message. I was like, for what it's worth, like, they're my original bassist and my new bassist. I don't know if you want to have me on or not, but here I am.
it's. I mean, that's part of I want to have everybody on.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know everybody. So.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. You have to get to know new people,
Yes.
and that
Part
was
of the business.
Yeah, and that's been one of the really fun aspects of having a band is just getting to know these guys and watching them get to know each other and
getting new contacts through
yeah,
them.
yeah, and like they've all they all have other projects.
Right.
Jake and Jeff are in a band called together. Jake has his own band. My violinist Caleb is in countless like orchestras and plays. He's a teacher.
That's cool.
Eric Dalmedia, I think, is close to how you might pronounce it.
Yeah.
He's involved in countless projects too with his. I know he's
incredible saxophone.
Yeah, incredible saxophone player. He's got Swamp that he plays with. He's got, what's that other one? Bottom Buzzers is the other one that he plays in. Those are two that I've seen. But I know he plays with other people, and he'll just go to open mics. Yeah,
and literally, it's so incredible when someone can go to an open mic with like an instrument like that, like a saxophone or a violin or whatever not essential, quote unquote, not essential. Music instrument.
Yeah.
And just come on a song and then just play along like it's nothing.
Yeah.
They don't have to know the key. They don't have to know nothing.
No.
They just play, and it's like. I aspire to be those kind of musicians. That I wish I could. Henry Dvorak is one of those people. Granted, he plays the bass, which is
I've heard that.
Yeah,
I've only practiced with him one time, and we have our second practice tonight, and then we have our gig tomorrow at Blue Sky Tavern in Edders.
He has he's really good with pitch.
Yeah,
I'm okay with pitch, but I'm always looking at him like, okay,
right, yeah. And those guys they hear so much, and they understand music so much more than I do. And then I do some weird things on the guitar because it's kind of like the Dave Matthews influence. Like he just plays some weird chords, and I don't know what they are. So I'll bring some of these chords to the guys. I'm like, I don't know what this chord is.
Help me figure
it out. And they're quick and understanding to figure it out. And I've never been one to I'm not nearly as good at understanding music as any of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
B, I don't play their instruments.
Right.
Like I'm never gonna tell them what to do on their instrument. Like here's my song, help me make it better.
Yeah, help me arrange it.
Yeah. Like this is what I wrote. And we have one of our newer songs. We actually kind of sat down and figured out together how we were gonna do a couple of parts, and we haven't always had the time to do that with 6 pieces. Everyone's involved in other things. It's hard enough to book, let alone practice.
Right, I was going to say, at that point, your main focus is trying to book something, and then we'll worry about practice later.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it has to. And I'm so lucky that all of these guys are just such fantastic musicians that now I know that they're that good. I can kind of expect
relax.
I can relax and just expect that they're going to be good. When I first put the band together, I was always just nervous about them not hitting their marks, and then they just never missed them. And I'm like, here I am missing what I'm supposed to do because I'm worried about what you're doing.
Right.
Like, if I just play what I'm supposed to play, they'll take care of the rest.
Yeah, that's something as a pianist that I'm not that good at piano. People will disagree with me on.
I get the same thing, right? I don't think I'm that good at guitar.
Well, because what I can do is I'm one of those musicians who like legitimately I went to college for music.
Yeah.
So I understand the ins and outs. But so you can give me a chord chart and I'll play off that. But they'll look at me and do like, hey, do a solo. I'm like, I don't know my scales well enough to do a solo.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I can improv for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna be. It's if a chord chart or if a chord progression is changing so quickly, that's something that's just out of my brain. Well, I know some people who just go look at you and they go wild.
Yeah.
And like Eric or Henry, they'll just go wild.
Jake's capable too. Like him and I would play acoustic shows together, and I'm like, I can get lost playing 2 chords, just watching him just go up and down the neck.
Yeah. When I play with Bjorn sometimes.
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
He's unbelievable. He's like he'll tell me before like, all right, it's E minor and A minor, and I'm like, is that really it? And because I've listened to his song, I've listened to play that same song a million times. I'm like, that's really it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And he
Yeah.
just makes up this wild stuff on the
Yeah.
guitar, and
His-
I'm like, I don't even know how to compete with that on a
Yeah.
piano.
His energy's unreal. I met him at Booby's open mic a couple years ago. The same night I met Jake Joyce, because our drummers who brought him in, and we went to the Bjorn's open mic and played a few songs and got to hang out with our drummer, and that's when Jake officially accepted his invite to be part of this project. And
Yeah.
it's crazy. They all have their own things. It just blows my mind that like Jake has all of these cover songs that he knows and these Grateful Dead
His
songs
style.
he knows and his songs, and then it can just come into to play with me on an acoustic show or full band and just blow my mind. Like
It's
just like you did
wild.
last time. Like
Yeah.
this is different than what you did last time, but it just blows my mind every time.
So I want to we're kind of rounding out our time on the radio.
Yeah.
So I want to get into some of your songs.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
So we have 3 songs. Which one would you like to play first?
I think we'll go with the first song on the
So the For the
EP.
World.
It's For the World, yes.
Tell me what that's about.
I wrote this song once the band became 6 pieces, and I knew I wanted a bigger sound. It's kind of about realizing that the world isn't this fairy tale that you might have been taught it was, or I came to this realization as a parent. So like, just things you worry about now that you didn't used to worry about.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about this song is I focus on a lot of negatives about the world, and I talk about weeping for the world. But at the end, and I almost didn't do this, the end of the song, I talk about how there's still hope. Like despite all of that, there's still hope. And I think looking back and realizing that was a decision I made, I'm really glad I did, because I almost didn't put that part in the song, and then it would have just been this negative song. And I don't want people to get that out of my music. It still has an upbeat feel to the song, but I'm not talking about the most upbeat things. But at the end, there's a reminder that despite all of those things, like we can still.
There's still hope.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, well, with that said, this is For the World.
The day, some clouding by the dark. There's a flood of hate, love is in a drought. There's people being poisoned each and every day. Fingers being pointed all each and every way. I'll weep for the world, I'll weep for you and me. I'll weep for the world, is this how we're supposed to be? No, I don't think so. Ain't it funny how we're in the age of information, and schools are made for profit instead of education. Their students taught to test instead of people to grow. A world that's run by greed is all we'll ever know. And I'll weep for the world, I'll weep for you and me. And I'll weep for the world, is this how it's supposed to be? No, I don't think so. No. truth. They create the problems, then blame it on the youth. Distract and divide, lather, rinse, repeat. Add a little pinch of fear and watch it as they eat it. Well, I'll weep for the world, I'll weep for you and me. Now weep for the world, is this how it's supposed to be? No, no, I don't think so. No, no. Despite all of this, there's hope for us, you see. We come together and for the world find peace.
And that was For the World by Rascal Revival. That was a really funky, cool piece.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you can follow him like we said in the beginning of the show. You can follow Rascal Revival on Spotify. You have Bandcamp, Instagram, Facebook page. You have a website, rascalrevivalmusic.com.
And if you just go to rascalrevival.com, it'll take you to rascalrevivalmusic.com.
Ah,
I know a guy.
another guy. All right, well, we're gonna pick up with another song. This is called "Point of View," and I assume the song is about a point of view.
Yeah, I actually started writing this song sarcastically. Somebody said something wasn't the most intelligent thing, and I wrote this line down, knowing like this could be something later on. When I hear it, it might come back to me which line it was, but I came back to that same line later. From a different point of view, and then also I was able to keep the song about being a point of view, so like it was cool, little double meaning to finishing that song.
What is one thing unique about this song that?
The long intro. So when we recorded this, it was during COVID. I wanted to record live because that's where I think the magic happens. Everyone together.
Yes.
But we just really wanted to get our new 6-piece sound out there. So I recorded acoustic guitar and drums first, and then everyone else came in later and added their parts. And my intention was to have everyone use that long intro to try a couple different things out, and then we pick what we want. And then I forgot to tell anyone. So then they just had all this time to play over the music, and it just turned out fantastic. I was like, I can't touch this.
Right.
Like
right.
Jake pieced it all together. He's who mixed it, and just put all these pieces together and into such a great way. I was just like, yeah, this has a long intro now.
Right.
So now, like, I always pictured when I wrote the song, it would have a short intro, but
now
the power of music, man, it's now long, and I love it. It's so good. I love the long intro. Like, I was so happy with the way it turned out.
We'll have to listen to that. Well, it's coming up right now.
Right on.
This is Point of View from the Rascal Revival.
their eyes. You can look at anything, which angle you choose. You can never look away from your own point of view. Sun shines down on us, even when it rains. Vision of such grace and beauty, chaos still remains. The sun is setting on our lives, but somewhere else it's rising. Well, some are passing time around, some are just surviving. You can look at anything, which angle you choose. You can never look away from your own point of view.
And that was a point of view from Rascal Revival. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left on the radio. So if you want to find more of his music, we've been talking throughout his music. So unfortunately, I didn't really get a chance to listen to it, but we have so much more to talk about. I'm definitely gonna have RJ on here again. But we're going to keep continuing this conversation a little bit on Facebook Live. So if you're interested in hearing more of his stuff, you can go to his website, rascalrevival.com or rascalrevivalmusic.com. That is RASCAL Revival. Shouldn't be that hard to spell. And then music, which is not that hard to spell either.
Correct.
And .com. You can find him on Spotify. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, Bandcamp,
iTunes, the internet,
everywhere. You can find them everywhere.
Yeah.
And you can follow us here on Facebook. That is facebook.com/The Story Corey Rosen, CORYROSEN. You can search us up on Spotify using that same tagline, The Story Corey Rosen. You'll find the brick background with the red neon lights saying The Story. You can find us there on any streaming platform. You can soon enough we'll be posting clips on YouTube, so if you want to just scan through and see whatever clips you want to hear about, you can go to there. It's The Story, and I'm sure you can search it up the same way, The Story Corey Rosen, and it'll be one of the first things that pop up. With all that said, thank you guys so much for listening on the radio. We're going to keep going on Facebook Live. And with that said, everybody, have a great day.
Enjoy.
All right. So, talking about, I want to talk about the songwriting process for you guys, because it is such a big piece and big part, but also you only have a limited amount of time to practice because everyone else is doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So, are you the primary songwriter, or do you allow other people to write songs and submit them as well?
I am primarily the songwriter. I would be completely open to any of the guys if they brought something to me. They're all incredible musicians and honestly better musicians than I am. So if they brought something to me and everyone else enjoyed it, I don't see that there would be any reason not to do it. But as of now, yes, I am the primary songwriter. I try to get songs as close to complete as I can. before I bring them to them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's been a couple times that I have a lick on guitar or a chord progression that I'm like, hey guys, I'm making this into a song, so I'm gonna play it for you just so you hear it a few times. My most recent song I actually wrote with my daughter is one of those chord progressions. It was one that, like, at the end of practice a couple times I'd be like, guys, I think I'm gonna write a song with this. I'm not sure what I'm doing with it yet, but it's gonna sound something like this. It was just the chords to the verses. And then my daughter and I figured out the rest of the song together, and which that was a blast. That was so cool.
I'm sure.
That's what we did for quiet time for a couple of days in a row. I asked her what she wanted to do one day. She said she wanted to write a song. And I said, all right, what do you want to write a song about? She said, putting your shoes on. So the name of the song is Put Your Shoes On. And it's funny. One of the first times I played the song, I mentioned that she helped me write it. And then I said, it's called Put Your Shoes On. And this couple completely misinterpreted the fact that she genuinely helped me write the song. Mm-hmm. And it's not me telling her to put her shoes on, which is a struggle with a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old.
Exactly.
It can be. So I get why they interpreted it that way, but she genuinely helped me write the song.
That's so cool. Have you found any like double meaning for you? Because I'm sure for a child's mind, she's just like, well, I'm gonna tie my shoes and I'm gonna put it on my foot.
Yeah, it's actually it could actually be looked at in a very philosophical way.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, put your shoes on. That's so figurative.
Yeah, get your mind right before you leave the house. Because the next line, it kind of talk about whatever you're going to do, bring water. Like, I was like, what do you want to do next? Like, what else should we talk about? And I remind them pretty regularly, drink water. And so the next line, I think I say, should probably grab some water. And then after that, I talk about, because what else do we do if we're going to go somewhere? Like, bring water? Or if we're going to be a while, do you want to bring a snack? So the next line is about bringing a snack and how they fuel your body and mind so that you can put your shoes on and walk out the door and conquer the day, which is kind of what the chorus is about.
That's wild.
That's so cool. And then the last verse, let me think if I can get this right, is about laughter. That's what it was. We took a while to come to it, but the last line is about laughter. And then I snuck in a part about keeping your body moving, because as I get older, I realize it's important to take care of your body and just stay moving. Because when I've felt the worst of my like previous injuries from sports are the days that I'm the least active. Like, if I get up and moving right away, that's part of the 15, 20 minutes I spend waking up before my kids now. Like, I just stretch and do push-ups or something to get kinks out.
That is something I have learned over the past few years, because I grew up the same way as you. I did sports all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And so I was naturally fit.
Yeah.
But in high school I had to give up sports it came to the point where I had to do theater or sports.
Yeah.
And I chose theater and music.
Yeah.
But ever since then I've slowed down, and I used to be really fit, and now I am not so fit.
Right.
They could say freshman 15. For me, it was like a freshman 100. I was almost 300 pounds at one point.
Wow.
It's some people are okay with that. I was not okay with that.
Right. Yeah.
The way I usually wake up is I'm always alert whenever I wake up. I know some people it takes them like an hour and a half at least to get to like fully mentally, but when I wake up, I'm there. Boom, I'm awake. So it's something I've learned to just, stretch a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit goes a long way.
But yeah, honestly, I met this one guy. He was like 50, 60 years old, and he literally was crawling on his knees, getting into these wire bits to do wire work. And I'm like, how in the world are you that flexible and that like spry at 60 something years old? And he was like, I literally do these 3 stretches, and what he like bent down to his toes, and he could put his palms on the ground.
That's nuts.
That's nuts,
yeah,
man.
That's nuts.
I used to be able to do that.
That hurts to think about.
It hurts to think. I didn't used to be able to do that. I used to be able to touch my toes, but now I can barely like touch halfway down my shin.
Right.
And I was like, wow, if I literally did that stretch every single day, how much better my back would feel.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And stuff like that. So it's been like over the past year, I've been really trying to focus on doing stretches that are going to improve, because I remember when I was flexible and it was so nice.
Right.
I remember when I could do I played soccer.
Yeah.
You have to run up and down the field constantly. I remember when that felt electrifying.
Right.
And I was a little bit out of breath, but I was still like
Oh yeah.
ready to go. I could go more.
Yeah.
Now I'm running up the stairs. I'm like,
Right.
"Whew,
Oh yeah.
I gotta take
Yeah.
a breath for a second.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to
Yeah.
to have
Oh yeah.
that.
To have your body fail you and it hasn't before.
Yeah, and I'm only 22 years old,
Yeah.
and that shouldn't be happening for me.
No.
So it's definitely a conscious thing for me to stretch, to walk around,
Yeah.
to and just to keep moving because I'm such a person who, if they don't get out of bed or if their phone isn't across the room to like
Right.
turn it off, I'm staying in bed.
Right. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been a journey and a half to keep moving.
Yeah.
So back to the songwriting process. Do you often come up? You had said that, hey, this is a chord progression. Do you often come up with chord progressions first or writing first?
I've actually kind of gone out of my way to never repeat
Hmm.
a process. I've recently come to the realization when I write lyrics, I think it's good for me to. It's either good for me or it's a pattern I've noticed. But if it's the songs that I like that stick, so I think it is good for me. I'll often write a first verse, and then a last verse,
Mm.
and then if there's a verse in between them, I write that one last.
Mm.
It gives me a good start and finish point. With this last song that I wrote with my daughter, that was straight through.
Right.
Sometimes I have something on guitar that I like, and I'll just try to sing what notes might come to mind with this progression, or with a lot of times I like to do like chords within like a lick, or a rhythm, like you heard it in the. Actually, probably we didn't do that one, but there's a few songs that do that, and I feel like what that allows me to do is the music almost leads the lyric more than if I take a lyric and then come up with a progression. I've done both. I tried not to stick to one way because I feel like
You're setting a formula for yourself.
exactly, and I don't think there is a formula per se. I don't know. I'm not sure if you've seen the movie Sound City or not.
No.
It's
I'll
incredible. It's definitely worth checking out. It's the story of a studio in, I'm pretty sure, California, where Nirvana recorded Nevermind, and Nevermind basically kept this place from going under because it was about to, but countless acts from Tom Petty to Fleetwood Mac was actually discovered and formed in this studio.
Oh wow.
It's a really cool story, but Tom Petty's interviewed in this documentary, and he mentions how they have a philosophy that a song should be recognizable with just vocals and one instrument. So that's one thing, because I've never met anyone who doesn't like Tom Petty's music.
Right.
I've never met anyone who has like Tom Petty tattoos, but there's not too many people that just don't like Tom Petty. And I feel like part of that is because he has that aspect of his songwriting. It's not necessarily a formula. It's just something that he wants to make sure is there, because if it's not there, then the song isn't there. If it needs more than just the guitar or just a piano, and the vocals, it's not quite a song. And don't get me wrong, his guys add stuff to it.
But that's the basic.
But the basic parts of the song are recognizable on just piano or just guitar. And when I heard that as a songwriter, I was just like, it took me a while to wrap my head around it, but I was just like, I think that's valuable and worth taking with me forward. But I don't think it's necessarily a formula, but it's definitely something that I was writing a song called Soon, and in my head it was going to be this really intricate song.
Mm-hmm.
But I reminded myself of that concept, and I played it with 2 chords, and that's how the song goes, because that's just what
that's what it needed.
That's what the lyrics warranted, and no matter how badly I wanted it to be more complicated, it's just 2 chords for the most part. And
that is something that I don't really regret. It's something I wish that I went to college for music composition.
Yeah.
So it was always ingrained to me, it needs at least 4 chords, or you can do more with it,
Yeah.
you know, explore, see and that stuff's great.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of these musicians that I play with, Cody, Bjorn, whatever have you, their music is so simple.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like, and that's not the drag on them at all.
No.
Because it's so good.
Yeah.
It's wild to me that they will only have 2 or 3 chords.
Yeah.
And they are killing it.
Yeah.
And their song is amazing because they do so much with that.
Yeah.
I wish I could do that.
Oh, yeah.
And I wish the complication wasn't a part of my mind almost sometimes.
Yeah.
Granted, I make some really cool stuff, but it's
I've had my guys mention that they like that I'm not musically trained.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons
Yeah.
to it. Because you'll only know whatever you know on the guitar.
Yeah.
And nothing more.
Yeah.
And so it's not it's sometimes it's more freeing just to
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
than because at least putting a limit on yourself frees up a lot of things.
Yeah.
Having no limit is oftentimes a limit.
Right? Yeah.
So it's really interesting how people will come up with these chord progressions that musically, like music theory wise,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
Or
I have a
isn't
couple of
supposed
those.
to.
Yeah, I have a couple of those.
Yeah, but within the right context and the
Yeah.
right usage, you figured it out
Yeah.
how to make it work.
Yeah. It's interesting to have guys who are so much more ingrained in the theory than I am, because I have a song, that has a funky chord in it. I was like, I don't know if this is like a minor 9. I think it is, but I'm not sure. And it was that or something else. And they had a conversation about it, and I forget what they decided it was, but this was just based on the chord. And then we sang it. We played the song, and I sang, and I was just like, something's not right. And I think it was Jake and Liam might have figured it out. I was actually adding a note vocally that made that chord something else. And without me singing it, they thought it was the other chord. But once I added that note I was singing, it made a difference. It made Liam play something different, or made
Right,
Jake play
yep.
something different. And once they knew that, we played it again, and it sounded
right.
fine. I knew it sounded off. I didn't know
what was.
Yeah.
But that that's also something I've noticed, that even if you aren't musically trained, you have an ear.
Yeah.
And everybody has an ear.
Yeah.
And that is what's most important.
It took me a long time to trust my ear, but I think I naturally have a good ear, but I didn't know I did per se. I had to have someone be like,
Confirm.
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's really interesting on the writing process, that you start and finish.
Lyrically, I found myself doing that a few times. I don't do that for every song,
Right.
but I've noticed it.
That's
And now that
something-
I've noticed it, I don't know. I haven't done it again since, but I don't know if it's not on purpose.
Right. Yeah.
I don't get the chance to write a ton.
That's probably fair.
It's funny. My wife had a friend over recently, and she's like, "So how do you write songs?" And if I have an idea, I'll write it on like whatever piece of paper I can find, and then it just stays on my kitchen counter till like
you figure something
I'm doing
out.
something out. Like I glance at it while I'm doing dishes, and something pops into my head, or like
Just slowly add.
I just leave it out where I can see it.
That's interesting. I'll have to start doing that.
Yeah, I feel like that's helped a lot, because I'm so much more limited with my time now than I used to be. That like in the middle of carrying a toy from one room to the other, or carrying my youngest from one room to the other, I have an idea and I can quick write it down. I used to do that, like keep notes on my phone, and I still do, but something about writing down is on a piece of paper for me, that if I'm gonna write a song, it's gonna be pencil and paper or pen and paper.
That's so interesting. My handwriting is so horrible that I've relegated it to like documents,
Yeah.
like Google Docs, and that way, I know where it's at. First
Yeah.
off, I don't lose a piece of paper, because God knows I would lose every single piece of paper in the world. But yeah, that's so interesting, because the way I usually write songs is it'll either be the chorus first, or I'll just write it through.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done chorus first and straight through, but
yeah, but I've never every single time I try to do something different, it just I can't,
yeah,
or I forget about it,
Yeah.
or I really want to regiment songwriting for me, because
Yeah.
you have to, it's just like sports. You practice something
Yeah.
over and over again, and you get better at it.
one thing that I started doing with like the way I speak especially with the kids, and I like to think it's entertaining for my wife too. Is sometimes I just like try to find creative ways to phrase things, and I feel like that helps me in my songwriting.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. And sometimes I get to talk in code to the kids, and my oldest is starting to learn how to spell things. So like, we're talking in like creative code now instead of spelling things, and I think that's actually really helped me when I want to create an image when I'm writing with. It's not as I'm more creative with how I approach it.
Yeah. That's something I've always been. I've been a smart aleck all my life.
Yeah, me too, man.
And
it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. So I've always been like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just It's not a door. It's just a plank of wood that's on hinges that tends to open up and it has a handle and everything.
I think that just rephrasing things has helped me when I am able to sit down and start songwriting. And the interesting thing about using a computer like documents is really nice thing about that is you can move things around. Like I ended up having errors all around with thoughts in the middle, and like there's definitely positives to it.
Right, but I've noticed that when you actually like write something, instead of like typing, because typing is too technical.
Yeah.
What writing, because it's so physical and like purposeful, it helps you remember so much more.
Me too. I used to get in trouble in high school because teachers would think I was making cheat sheets before tests. I'd rewrite my notes.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how I would cram for tests. I never wrote big. I have like architecture handwriting. I write in all capital letters and it's small. It's very neat. So like I always got accused of writing. I was like, this is literally. I had to open my notebook. Like, this is how big I write. Like,
right. It was for tests. What I would always do is I would cram it in, and then at the beginning of the test, before everyone else is like going to the first question, no, I'm writing out the equations that I need to remember, so that way I don't forget halfway through the test.
I did that in physics too. Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. So
right next to my name, you see the formulas I needed to remember for the physics test. Yeah,
because they'll give my teacher was give you like 30 minutes like study before the test. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna remember this. As soon as they give me the test, bam, I'm writing it down because I'm gonna forget.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's really interesting. We have a little bit of time left, so I'm gonna ask you some generic questions.
Yeah, please do.
Let's see. What is one thing that you know now that you would wish you had known when you had first started? And this can be related to children, music, any aspect of life.
I just wish I would have started playing music at a younger age. It's funny, I used to joke around with my friends in college. I had a ton of concussions growing up. And a lot of them sports related. And we used to joke around. My concussions as I reached high school and into college was actually God's way of telling me I should be doing something else. He'd just be like, hey, you should be doing something else. And I was just too stubborn and dumb to realize till concussions really forced me out of playing sports.
Yeah.
That was his way of trying to tell me you should be doing something else, but it's all I'd ever done, so I wasn't going to stop.
It's always funny how God works. And I don't know if you listen to this part of the podcast I have, but I was really into doing science, and I really wanted to be a zookeeper when I grew up,
nice.
Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But as soon as my mother died, she was a science teacher, but it just turned me off of science completely, and kind of shoved me into the music thing.
Yeah.
So and granted that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
But that's sometimes what it takes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's crazy how things that
don't seem related.
That's sad and dramatic can bring out things positive. Yeah.
Like without that, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be in Lancaster at all.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have started this.
If it weren't for music, I mean, being forced out of sports because you had too many concussions did its number on me emotionally.
Yeah, that's wild.
Because sports was all I ever knew, and I knew I wanted to play guitar, and I knew I had an interest in that, and I knew from an elementary school, all the way back in elementary school, like that's a fire inside of me that's been there, and between being forced out of sports and then the fact that I was just tired of saying I've always wanted to do that, it was just enough to
just to force
get
you
me
to do
into
it.
And that's honestly what helped me get out of the depression and the
Oh, for sure.
and the years of headaches and just getting out of that. I can really attribute to music.
Yeah, it's crazy how, because when you're so focused on a goal, like when
Yeah.
I was a kid, I knew I was gonna be a zookeeper.
Yeah.
That's what I knew.
Right.
And like, I'm sure for you, it was like I know I'm gonna do sports for the
Yeah.
rest of my life.
Like in college, I actually ended up. I started pole vaulting my junior year of high school.
Pole vaulting.
Yeah, and I actually ended up doing that in college instead of like all the sports I played my whole life, because I was kind of. First of all, I wasn't going to play football in college. I'm not big enough, but
Right.
but at that point, with some of those sports, I was just kind of burnt out. Like I knew I was going to play sports
Mm-hmm.
in college, so to me, the smartest thing was to do the newest thing because that was the most fun and new and exciting.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, and luckily, I was able to get good enough that I was able to do it in college for a little bit. I wasn't that competitive per
Right.
se, but it was fun while I did it, and then
But once that shatters,
yeah, I mean.
and
I actually had to take time off from pole vaulting because I messed up my shoulder.
oh no.
And then while I was rehabbing that, a friend of mine came up to me and asked me at the gym. He said, "Hey, Westchester's starting a wrestling club. I see you have a District 3 wrestling shirt on. Do you want to be part of it?" I was like, that sounds more fun than pole vaulting does right now because it's just I'm rehabbing right
Yep.
now. And I messed up my shoulder and got another concussion doing that. So that was that.
So so it just kept building up.
Yeah.
Wow.
But and a lot of concussions. I mean, from the time I was 3,
Right.
Jackass was really big when I was in high school. So
Yeah. Right.
I did some dumb things
Dumb things.
to lead me that way. But and I was reckless in sports, and I don't even necessarily per se that I regret doing those things. I do wish I would have learned a little earlier
Yeah,
that how important my brain was and what I could do to take care of it, and
Mm-hmm.
that maybe music is better and safer than some of those things, but
Yeah, that's why my mother would never let me play football. She was
Yeah.
like, "You got to protect your brain." And I was like,
yeah,
"Shut up, mom."
right, yeah. I didn't know, you know
Right,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
So, what you we kind of talked about this a little bit. Like that you are religious. What has worship? What do you describe as worship for you?
for me personally, and I'm sure there'll be people that argue with me about this. It's when I'm playing music. That's when I'm the most detached from everything else going on in the physical world per
Mhm.
se. So I feel like that's when I'm able to let like my soul shine the most. You know what I mean? And I feel like I personally believe that for everybody that's a different answer.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I ask it, everybody.
And I think I mentioned this to you earlier. I'm very big into science when it comes to my understanding of God, and I'm not sure that's the case for everyone. But I think it's so much more fascinating to think that God created this ever expanding universe with billions of galaxies and stars. Then in one day He created the earth and said there was light.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's a combination of religion and science together that can find us the answers that we seek as humans.
Yeah, it's.
I think I gave you this line when we were talking a little bit earlier. It's by J. Cole, who's a rapper who
Yep.
most people wouldn't think I'd even listen to, but he has a line that says, "Believe in God like the sun up in the sky. Science can tell us how, but it can't tell us why." And I think that's just a very short encompassing of how I believe the world works. I think, like I said, it's so much more fascinating to think that this has been designed,
Mm-hmm.
all of this, from the way that atoms work. I think I brought the double slit experiment to you, to the way that life grows, and it's so similar in plants as it is to animals, and how it just branches off from itself. And then you look at the outer space and just think that's all part of
Mm-hmm.
what stuff He's created too. And the fact, like, we can't even wrap our heads around billions of anything,
Right.
let alone billions of stars.
Like
There's
billions of
space-
massive,
yeah, like,
giant things
Just
that
spaced out so far apart, and we can't even see some of them. Like,
Not by our eye, at
No,
least. Yeah.
like the Hubble, like I mentioned this to you earlier, that the Hubble telescope focused on the same dark spot in space for 100 hours.
Where we thought nothing was.
Where we thought nothing was, and the images it brought back were billions of more
Billions
stars
of more
and galaxies. Like,
yep.
and then what blows my mind is when you compare that grand scale to the double slit experiment, which is,
for those who don't know, there was an experiment where they sent electrons, I think it was, through 2 different splits.
basically the premise of it is the results were different depending on whether or not the process was being watched.
Watched
And
yes.
recorded. So like they had atoms that were acting like particles of light, and they wanted to figure out why.
Why?
So they recorded it, and then they didn't act like particles of light anymore.
Yeah, because it's something completely, and not just only like us looking at it.
Yeah.
It was like being recorded and left alone by a
Yes.
camera, and that
Yeah.
affected
Yes.
the way that the particles and atoms interacted with each other.
Exactly.
And it's one of the most mind-blowing things of quantum physics that
Yeah.
we just haven't figured out yet.
Yeah, and it just blows my mind to think that like there's things like that we don't quite understand. Even gravity is technically a theory. The
Right,
theory of gravity.
Yeah.
And it's based on relativity, which we understand and we kind of accept as fact at this point, but technically it's still a theory.
And it changes wherever you're at.
Yeah.
One of the most mind-blowing things that I recently learned was that different animals and species perceive time differently.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I didn't.
No, yeah. So like and here's a quick experiment you can do at home is that, so a fly, right?
Yeah.
A fly in its perception. So we see at like 60 frames per second, right? That's kind of like what our eyes are attuned to. For a fly, it's at like 1,000 million, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why you can never hit it when you're going fast. But if you actually go slow, like really slow, to them, that's like eons of time.
Yeah.
And so you can actually catch a fly by really going slow and then grabbing it like that, versus if you go really slow or really fast, because they clock that in.
Yeah.
But it was like,
I'm a fan of the clap because if they're sitting here and they're gonna fly, they have to fly up.
yes.
So you clap above them.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That's
knowing
something
they're
cool.
going to fly up.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
I had a friend that could actually catch them like that.
Oh wow.
Because you just do that above them. I clap because you kill them, but
Right. That's so interesting.
yeah.
So hey, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
I wish we had more time. But I'm definitely gonna have you on again. This time I'm gonna pull the curtain a little bit back. RJ called me, and I didn't have it in my calendar, and so he called me. I was like, what? And I was like, oh no, I'll shoot. And so unfortunately we didn't get a lot of the time that we were supposed to get, but I'm definitely gonna have you on again. This has been a lot of fun, and there's so much more we can talk about. We haven't even touched on like what is it like to schedule a band together? What is it like to pull people together? How do you advertise that? How do you get bookings? There's so much more, and you guys have done a tour, right?
We have not.
Oh no, not yet.
No.
Is that in the future plans?
I would like to. It's tricky with the kids and with everyone else having bands and things that they are involved in. I would feel like I'd have to plan it a good amount ahead of time, and I'm not there yet. Like personally, I'm not that far ahead of my schedule, so I have to get there first.
So we can talk about that. We can talk about we just briefly talked about God and where we can get more into that.
Yeah, sure thing.
So definitely stay tuned for whenever that's coming out. We're gonna have to schedule that. But thank you guys so much for listening today. You can find him on his website, rascalrevival.com, rascalrevivalmusic.com. You can find him on Spotify, all streaming platforms, Facebook, same thing, Rascal Revival Music. And when are your upcoming performances?
Tomorrow night we have the band without violin because Caleb had a family emergency. We'll be at the Blue Sky Tavern down in Edders. That's all of the full band stuff I have going on. I have a lot of solo stuff.
Where can I find you in solo?
I put those on the Rascal Revival page as well. I'm actually not quite up to date on those. I need to get that together soon. Maybe I'll get to that tonight or tomorrow. But I'm at Springgate Vineyard twice a month in Harrisburg and in Mechanicsburg. I actually have a couple of private events coming up. I just booked Colonial Golf Club in Harrisburg, 2 dates, one in June, one in July. I'm pretty busy. Most weekends I have.
Sounds like.
If I'm not booked on a weekend, it means I have family stuff going on.
Right.
But I try to stay busy. And bring the band along when I can. I do acoustic duo stuff with Jake Joyce, which is a ton of fun. But yeah, full band tomorrow night at
Blue Sky
Blue Sky
Tavern.
Tavern in Edders. I might even try to go Facebook Live on that. I haven't done that much, but
Yeah, try it.
apparently
See what
people like
happens.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, with all that said, we will see you guys tomorrow. I have this one in my calendar. Tomorrow I'm gonna have the worship director of Victory Church in Ephrata, my good friend and roommate Hunter Wood. So if you want to tune in then at 10:30. And with all that said, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See you guys.
Thanks again.